What's up? It's Boston Card Hunter. I'm here with my boy Alex. We are going to talk about sports card breaking and whether it's gambling or not. And Alex is well positioned for this discussion. I wouldn't even say debate because we probably agree on most points because he is the founder of Collectors MD. And what Collectors MD does is provides an outlet for people who are struggling with gambling problems related to sports cards and breaking. And they provide meetings and that sort of thing. And we're going to talk about that as well. And we're going to debate just all of this stuff like gambling, breaking, sports cards. Alex, welcome, man.
Yeah, first off, Nick, thank you so much for having me back on. It's kind of wild thinking about when we first connected almost a year ago. You were like literally one of the first people to reach out to me. I think literally on day one
Yeah,
of Collectors MD. And, without hesitation, you invited me on the show. And just a couple weeks later, we had that conversation and it really served as this springboard and allowed me to kind of come out of my shell a little bit and speak honestly and openly about a lot of the struggles and it was one of the first spaces where I could really have this sort of
fabulous.
conversation. So fast forward a year and Collectors MD has grown into this movement, hosting weekly peer support meetings, putting out content, and it's been a rocket ship. So I can't thank you enough for your
Cool,
ongoing
man.
support.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, I'm going to try. I'm getting a lot of feedback that I'm a New Englander and a Bostonian and I interrupt a lot. So I'm going to try not to interrupt you today.
That's all right.
'Cause the
Uh,
audience just keeps, I can't help it. All right. I can't help it.
no
All
worries.
right. First thing, is sports card breaking actually gambling or are people just being dramatic about it?
Yeah, I think the problem is that people hear the buzzword gambling and immediately just assume accusation. Like you're calling someone reckless or irresponsible,
Hmm.
right? And that's not what it is. This is about the mechanics, not just the morality of it all. So breaking really sits in this gray area. You're paying money for a randomized outcome where chance determines the value and the emotional high is tied to whether you hit or miss. So that's not traditional collecting. That's not what collecting looked like, when I was growing up, when you were growing up. But it's also not a slot machine either, right? It's something sort of in between. And
Yeah.
pretending that it isn't doesn't protect anyone, right? Some people can engage with that casually and just walk away and be totally fine, losing out. And unfortunately, others just can't. And the fact that, different people experience the whole activity differently doesn't mean the mechanism isn't real. It just means risk isn't evenly distributed. So calling this out isn't being dramatic. It's being honest about the product actually, functioning or how it functions and how the human brain is wired and how it works.
Let's talk about the human brain because I think that's a really interesting point there. I do wonder if it isn't gambling or if it is gambling. Does this trigger the same dopamine cycle as blackjack or slots, do you think?
Yeah, so dopamine doesn't care what labels look like, right? It doesn't care if you label yourself an addict or a degenerate. It responds to patterns. And live breaks are built on things like anticipation, suspense, the near miss, the social reinforcement, the countdown timers, the instant gratification, the instant feedback. Those are the exact ingredients, the exact formula that casinos use because they reliably light up the reward system. And the spike actually happens before the card is revealed, not after, which is a common misconception. And that's why people end up chasing, right? One more break or one more box, one more rip, even after, going through a bad run. And, dopamine isn't about enjoyment. It's about the pursuit, the chase, as we call it in the hobby. And it teaches your brain that relief is just one action away. So when people say something like, it's just sports cards, it's a childhood hobby, they're skipping the part where the nervous system is being trained in real time.
Yeah.
This isn't a willpower issue, it's literally brain chemistry. And the industry, whether intentionally or not, is using those mechanics to their advantage to ultimately fill their pockets at the expense of a lot of customers.
Yeah, I did consulting in my past life for a lot of different companies, everything from South American governments to consumer companies. One of them was a casino, and you guys would not believe how optimized that experience is. It's like a department store. I mean, everybody knows you can't find your way out of a casino. Um, you don't know what time of day it is at a casino. They've got it engineered. The pans that are at slot machines, those things are engineered to create a very specific sound. Like they
Right.
actually will, like cater the sound to you to try to get more, like you're winning, even if it's just nickels hitting that tin and it sounds amazing. There is scents. People have actually tested aromas in
Yep.
casinos. There's a reason there are drinks. Breaking's a little bit different, but you have to always just look around at how breaking has evolved to keep you as a captor.
Right.
And that's kind of the next question. There are some breakers, I think, who do it right. I'm not going to name anybody today. There are some who do it right. There are some who are more predatory. It's a predatory scale, I guess, right? And
Yeah.
some
It's
are
a good way to
high on the
good way to
predatory
look at
scale,
it.
and some are very low,
Yeah.
and doing it right. And then there's like everything in between, and it depends on the product too, and stuff like that. But do you think that there's lies breakers tells themselves like, hey, there's some skill to this. You need to know a checklist and you need to know what team is popping or do some
Yeah.
research. Like, what do you think are some of the lies breakers tell
Yeah.
themselves?
Why break anywhere else? My favorite line in the hobby. Yeah, no, I mean the most common lie breakers tell themselves is I'm just providing entertainment. And look, I'm not saying like you just said, Nick, every breaker or not every breaker is evil or a bad actor.
Hmm.
Um, but that phrase, we're just providing entertainment, it can become a shield of sorts. Because if you call it entertainment, you don't have to sit with the reality that you're essentially operating a high speed, variable reward system where the customer pays for uncertainty and is essentially chasing upside. A lot of breakers, I think, are, kind of in denial about what they really are in this ecosystem. They're not just personalities. They're not just rippers. They're not just breakers. They're dealers. They are the distribution point. They're the ones pulling the lever over and over on behalf of the audience, on behalf of the customers, with hype, urgency, the countdown timers, the sudden death auctions, the wheel spins, and using language like, last call or, one more or you're due or, we're heating up. Like that's not neutral language. That's behavioral influence.
Yeah,
And the
there's
lie,
scolding too. Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted and I said I
you're
wouldn't
good. You're
interrupt.
good. I think the lie, like we're calling it a lie here, it's not always intentional. It's a product of this system. And so because of that, it's psychological. Because the moment a breaker admits and says something like to themselves or to their, internal team, I'm basically running a mini casino on a phone, the next question is, brutal. What responsibility do I have for the downstream damage? So instead they tell themselves, they chose it, they being the customer, or it's
Yeah.
their money. I'm not forcing anyone. I'm just opening product. And on paper, yeah, that is true. But in real life, the breaker is also shaping the environment that makes impulsive decisions a lot easier, a lot more frictionless. And for some people, that environment doesn't just cost them money, it costs them relationships, mental health, self worth,
Yeah.
sleep, peace of mind. So, yeah, the most common line is, the common lie is I'm just an entertainer because the truth is like a lot heavier than that. They're the
Yeah.
operators of a system that can really hurt people even if it was never intentional.
Yeah, and I want to pause here for a second before the next question. Just let you guys know, there's a reason Alex founded this company. We didn't get into that in the beginning. It's a long story, and I think we'll sprinkle it in through these questions, especially the next one. Alex has actually experienced this personally, some of these challenges being on the other end of it. It's funny, I did a video on here a couple days ago about blame, and it's so interesting. It's like, do you blame yourself or do you blame the system? And the answer really is both. You
Yeah,
know, there's accountability both ways. But what do you think? And you've experienced this, so you can actually talk to this personally. But
yeah,
at what point does having fun in the hobby cross the line into addiction?
yeah. So like you said, Nick, I learned this the hard way. But it really crosses the line when the hobby stops being additive, like adding value as an additional layer of your lifestyle, and starts becoming regulatory, where it's like the focal point every day. Your plans, your agenda, your work, your family, everything revolves around it. And that's happening more and more. And so when breaking becomes how you deal with things like stress, boredom, loneliness, anxiety, depression, frustration, when it becomes really emotional management instead of this form of entertainment, which is what it should be, the relationship with collecting, with the hobby, starts to shift. And that's exactly what happened with me. Another big signal is what happens when you try to stop. If pausing creates this sort of agitation or restlessness or fear, that's not about missing out on the fun and excitement. That's what we call dependence, right? Addiction isn't defined by how much you spend, it's defined by why you spend and what it's costing you emotionally, financially, and relationally. So yeah, I mean, we can get into more of
Mhm.
my lived experience as we progress here, but yeah, I saw it firsthand, and
Yeah.
there's so many other people that are struggling with the exact same thing that have zero idea that there are resources out there that can help them.
All right, we'll get into the resources towards the end of this,
Yep.
guys, because I never like to present a problem without a solution. I think
Yep.
that's just a terrible way to go through life is to just point out problems without solutions. So we'll take some steps at the end here. Like maybe you're watching this and you're like, oh crap, maybe I am addicted. Maybe you think this is all stupid and he's like an industry plant or something like that, which by the way, I assure you he's not,
Yeah.
because we talked on day one. But I think maybe you want some help at the end, and I will make sure he has time to share that. But here, so let's say you do want to help somebody. What are some of the red flags a spouse or family member can watch out for?
Yeah, this is a really important one because again, this hobby, this idea of collecting, especially with cards, sports cards, Pokemon cards, what's really considered juvenile by, the outside looking in, people don't really recognize it as a problem. So a lot of what happens right off the bat is secrecy. Secrecy is usually the first one. The hiding the purchases, the minimizing costs, the lying by omission, the mood swings that track directly with breaks or box openings or eBay purchases. It's really financial stress without clear expectations. We'll also see a lot of, defensiveness, irritability just when being questioned, like, hey, why you been on your phone for so long? Or like, you didn't go to bed last night till 2 or 3 in the morning. Like, what were you doing? Right. And then people justify, they make justifications to make themselves feel better. They say
Mhm.
things like, I deserve this, or it'll even out, or you just don't understand the hobby. And so addiction doesn't show up as like chaos at first. It shows up as confidence wrapped around avoidance. And the longer it stays unchallenged or unchecked, the harder it can become to sort of take a step back, unwind, or, like we were talking about before, rewire the
Rewire.
brain.
Yeah. I know one of my degrees is psychology, and we talk, a lot of the coursework was around addiction's very difficult to cure. You have to actually parlay that you have to change the addiction into something that doesn't hurt you as much. And so a
Right.
lot of the popular choices are religion, fitness, music, stuff like that. Because it's hard to just turn a light switch off. You need to turn something else on to take the
Right.
brunt of that emotion. Um, so, uh, and people do have a lot of success as long as they find something else, to replace that addiction. It's very interesting. The whole
Yeah.
thing's interesting.
Yeah, I was a psychology minor in college, and what's interesting is I was in advertising sales for 13, 14 years before I started Collectors MD and never really had the opportunity to apply, some of what I learned in college. Granted, it's been a long time, but yeah, it's some of this stuff is really, really interesting how the human brain works.
Right. So like, I guess I have a different view on this because I live sort of like a libertarian, but like, do breakers and platforms have a moral responsibility to protect people, or is this just personal accountability?
Yeah, this is one that comes up all the time, right? Especially, people in the comments, the naysayers, the folks that are like, you're an adult, just make an adult decision. Just stop. Like if you're doing something harmful, not just to you, but those around you, stop the behavior. So it's really both. It's always both. Individuals are 100% responsible for their choices, especially adults. That doesn't go away. But the
Right.
systems are designed around things like urgency and scarcity and constant access. And so those things don't get to pretend to be neutral. Platforms know exactly what drives engagement. They have the best of the best marketing teams putting together these promo messages and the product itself and how to market it in a way that will pull the heartstrings of collectors. It's not by coincidence. And
Yeah.
so breakers also know exactly how to hype in any product. Like they understand how hype influences behavior. And when design choices intentionally reduce friction and increase impulse, this whole idea of responsibility doesn't just go away just because the transaction is optional. We can ask people to be accountable and ask systems to stop pretending they don't shape outcomes at the same time. They can
Yeah.
coexist.
Yeah.
That's not anti business. That's not anti hobby. That's just having a mature adult conversation.
Well, it's like, I don't know, alcohol, right? Like you have kids, and if you're a good parent, you talk to them about, you're going to go to college, you go to high school, parties, things are going to happen. This is how you can be responsible, right? This
Right.
is don't drink 15 beers your first day, something like that. And there's a
Right.
little bit of accountability. Watch where your kids go. Make sure they're not, I don't know, drinking six packs in the basement or something like that. But also, you don't want that alcohol company like catering to kids, like advertising in kids' commercials, which obviously isn't allowed. And it might seem crazy, but back in the day, cigarettes and stuff were in Sports Illustrated and things
Yeah.
like that. So it's always both, and it always will be both with any activity like that. Um, so yeah, it's a good take on it. Now, have you seen somebody personally lose their life savings through breaking, or have you heard any stories like that?
Yes. So none of this is theory for me, and this is where we can come back a little bit to my lived experience. I didn't wake up one day and just lose everything in like one dramatic moment, or
Yeah.
because of one break or one tilt session at the casino. It really happened slowly, and it was like one break, one rip, one purchase at a time. And it wasn't like I wasn't thinking. Like I felt like I was using logic, but I was justifying. I was always believing that that next hit, that next big card, would fix the last, and it happened. So there was that false sense of hope. There was an illusion, right? Because there were times where I hit a massive card and was able to sell it for five figures and then recoup a lot of my losses. But instead of just stopping, I would just keep going.
Yeah.
And so I would tell myself that I was in control. I was in the driver's seat until I just wasn't. And so watching money disappear while convincing myself it made sense is a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone. And so beyond myself, now every week in our peer support meetings, we hear these anonymous versions of the same story. People who chase losses, people who hid debt from spouses,
Yeah.
people who didn't realize how far it went until the damage was already done, people who, have lost everything because of sports cards, not
Yeah.
just their life savings, but their homes, their cars, their spouses, their kids, their jobs. Like these aren't rare horror stories anymore. They're patterns.
I've
And
heard several
pretending that they
myself
don't
too.
exist doesn't protect the hobby. It protects denial.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I've not as many, but I have heard bad stories for collectors too. They
Yeah.
just like buy stuff that, they just, I don't know, they bought something for no reason, some prospect or whatever, and it
Yeah.
doesn't pan out. They lose a ton of money. You can lose money that way too, just collecting
Absolutely.
cards. And maybe they don't even intend to flip, but they all of a sudden now they have an illiquid asset that's tied up a lot of money, and that could cause stress too. The whole
Yeah.
the whole industry, it's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, which leads
It,
to this, what do you think is more dangerous? You got a casino, a brick and mortar casino. Now, I'm aware that you can place bets on your phones now. I did myself for the Super Bowl.
yeah.
Um, or a phone in your pocket with whatnot notifications.
Yeah. So a brick and mortar casino, it has walls, right? You have to physically get in a car and make the concerted effort to drive to a physical destination. And so, because of that, there's a sense of physical friction. You have to go through several steps in order to get to the table, right? Your phone doesn't have any of that. It follows you everywhere, into
Yeah.
work, into bed, into moments of vulnerability. And so these push notifications manufacture this sense of urgency. They collapse, the space between impulse and action. And so when access is just 24/7, constant, in your face, that opportunity to pause and reflect just completely disappears. And without being able to pause and reflect, even the smartest, most disciplined people can end up making decisions they would have never made otherwise. So that's really the inherent risk.
Yeah, casinos post very clearly. You can go look up roulette odds, house advantage in 5 seconds. You can just Google that or ChatGPT or whatever.
Right.
Same thing with roulette. Poker is a bit more of a game of skill. So, obviously there's a rake there at the casino. Um, they, and I feel like I'm a half intelligent guy. I've broken a couple times just for fun. Um, I don't fully understand the odds of serial number breaks and pick your player, pick your team breaks. I can't get that in my head in 5 seconds. Now, yeah, if I sat down with a pad and was like, I spent like a couple days on it, I could probably come up with the vig.
Yeah.
But I have spoken to breakers about their margins, and some are quite honest. Some say 20%. I think the repackers are making 80%, in my opinion. Um, but I don't know. It's like a societal thing, right? It all changed in. I hate to go all sociology on this, but in 2007, the iPhone came out, man, and a lot of things changed. One
Yeah.
funny graph I like to show people is the iPhone release and the iPhone usage. It's a curve going like this,
Hmm.
and then another one I like to show is Googling hemorrhoids and usage. It's the exact same curve because everybody's sitting with their phone in the bathrooms or they're hooked to their phones. And I bet you there's probably correlations with accidents
Yeah.
and texting. And um,
100%.
we've just turned into cyborgs and
Yeah.
we're not meant to be a hive mind like that. We're
Yeah.
primates.
Yeah. Just to piggyback off that, Nick, think about where we are in today's day and age with technology, with smartphones, with access, now AI being on the cutting edge of everything.
Yeah.
What is the world going to look like in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, in 20 years from now? Right. I firmly believe that technology, now that AI especially is involved, is just going to continue to expand at an exponential rate.
Well,
And
let's
so,
talk about that.
what
You
kind of
know,
impact does that have on the hobby?
let's talk about the world and we'll talk about the hobby in 5 years.
Yeah.
I think AI is going to be the end of society. I mean, I have a very
A lot of people agree.
I've lived through a lot of the internet 1.0, 2.0, social media. I've never seen anything like this. I've met people that literally don't think for themselves at all. There's somebody, I won't name him on IG, but he's got over 10,000 followers. Every single thing he does is AI. When he DMs you, it's AI. And when he has a conversation, it's AI. And I am actually worried about our ability to critically think going
Yeah.
forward. And man, it's going to be interesting. But then people probably said that about the car, the train, the nuclear
Yeah.
bomb,
And there's
everything
tech to
else.
be said
But sports
about.
cards.
Right. Like if you're using AI, that's not cheating. I think if you're using it to, be more efficient, to help you with certain activities, operations, whether it be work related, personal, you're more or less just taking advantage of the technologies that are available to you.
Right.
The same way people started using typewriters back in the day instead of writing with a pen, right? It's more efficient. And so if you use it correctly, if you use it the appropriate way, then that's fantastic. But if, yeah, to your point, if you're just using it for quite literally everything and no longer um, putting together your own thoughts or words or opinions or beliefs, I mean,
It's
it's
not healthy.
subjective,
It's
but
not healthy.
it's not
Um,
healthy.
so what do you think the hobby looks like in 5 years if this really isn't kept in check and people continue to have problems like you've outlined, what do you think our industry looks like?
Yeah, so I think the burnout that we're seeing across the board just starts to accelerate more. The trust erodes, the more people join breaks and leave. They end up just walking away, but not just, you know, with their tail between their legs. They're ashamed and they're feeling all of these different emotions, right? And so I think this sense of churn that we're seeing across these platforms will eventually slow down and the hobby will end up in a really dark place if we don't start to make proactive changes. And so I also think that regulation will eventually come. I don't know when that will be, but if we, again, aren't proactive it's not going to be thoughtful or hobby friendly. It's going to be reactive to the harm that's being done. And so, yeah, and then like even worse than that, if nothing changes publicly, if there is no regulation, and the damage just ends up staying hidden, people will disappear while everybody, in the industry who are sort of on the other side, breakers, platforms, manufacturers, just sort of tell themselves that it's all fine. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like hobbies don't collapse from criticism. They collapse from denial. And addressing this doesn't weaken the hobby. It's really the only way it survives long term. And just to be clear, this isn't about being anti-hobby or pessimistic. It's actually the opposite. This is just realism rooted in real care, real passion. I really genuinely care about the hobby. And we want the hobby to survive long term. We want it to be healthy, sustainable, and something that people can actually participate in without, quietly hurting or losing themselves. And not just adults, kids too, because if we continue to normalize a lot of this unchecked hype, a lot of the behavior around urgency and FOMO and the lack of guardrails, we're teaching this next generation that risk without reflection is just part of the fun. It's just par for the course. So, real reform and real accountability aren't threats to the hobby. They're how it grows up. They're how it earns trust, and protects people and builds something that's meaningful and lasts. So, if we actually love this space, then pretending everything is just fine isn't, loyalty. It's avoidance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
If
we,
we don't keep this in check, I'm going to be a little bit more grim here. I'm pretty good at forecasting industries. I did that for a living for a while. Um, I'd say in 5 years, if this doesn't get under control, you're going to see two-thirds of breakers go out of business, and you'll see that last third consolidate into, a few big companies that will always be
yeah,
here. And that's going to change things a lot. It's
yeah,
going to change the
I could see
liquidity of
that.
the slabs you're sitting on. It's going to change the repack companies. It's going to change everything because what's going to happen is, people are just going to smoke $200 and they're going to be like, what did I get for this? And then even worse, you're going to have 16-year-olds doing it.
Yep,
That'll be
you
the
already
first
do.
regulation that comes. We're going to see some state. There's just too many lawsuits going on. I know there's one for whatnot right now in Utah. Um, you'll see an age restriction in some state, and then whatnot's just once they're forced to do it in one state, they'll just do it everywhere, and then
Yeah,
everybody else will do it. And that's probably a good thing. But I don't know. We'll see, man. We
we'll
shall
see.
see.
Yeah,
So this is really gloomy stuff.
that's not what it's intended to be,
But now
but
here's the
it's we're
thing.
just
All right.
again, we're being realistic.
Yeah. Now if you're watching this and you're like, crap, okay, I'm addicted to this,
Yeah.
or I'm trending towards a problem, or maybe you're totally fine and you're just a collector and don't care, but you know somebody who might be dealing with this stuff. What are some of the resources that Collector MD has and how can you find them?
Yeah, if any of this resonates with you, it doesn't matter if you're a breaker, you're on like the industry side, you're a collector, or you're just someone who's starting to question their relationship with the hobby. What we always say is you can't get through tough times in isolation, right? You have to
Yeah.
lean on your peers. You have to lean on community. And so that's what Collectors MD is here to offer. And so you can reach out anytime. We have a website, collectorsmd.com. You can email info@collectorsmd.com. We have social chat. We're on pretty much every social platform. We have tools and resources on our website. You could see all of our social channels on at bio.collectorsmd.com. And beyond all that, we offer education, open conversation, and peer support, right? Not judgment, not mandates, and not hey, you have to quit in order to, to heal. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different journey and a different path. And so we meet folks where they are.
Hmm.
So yeah, we,
Cool.
we just we have it's a place to slow things down,
Oh,
be honest, and ultimately our mantra is collect with intention, not compulsion.
I got one last question for anybody
Yep.
that's still listening. The brake mats that you've
Yeah.
got. I know Rip Hamilton uses one. I texted him and I said I was like actually quite proud of him for doing that. I
Yeah.
gave him a lot of crap in my early days, but we get
I
along
know.
well now.
Danny's my
What
boy.
what do you say about? people saying like, oh, well, that just makes it okay. Like these breakers just going to put a brake mat down and that makes it okay.
Yeah, it's a totally fair question, and I get why people would ask that. The short answer is, the mat doesn't magically make everything okay. What it does is it changes the tone and it introduces things like an opportunity to pause. It creates awareness, accountability, maybe curiosity within a space that historically hasn't had any of those things.
Yeah.
So the whole rip responsibly message, and this is part of our initiative that we've rolled out in the hobby. And Rip Hamilton is not the only big breaker that's leveraging the message to ultimately create a healthier and safer space for their customers. But using it isn't like a hall pass.
Yeah.
It's a signal. It says we acknowledge this can be risky for some people, and we're not pretending otherwise. What actually matters is what comes with the mat.
Yeah.
Are there limits? Are those limits encouraged or are they ignored? Is language responsible or hype driven? Are people pressured to chase or supported to pause, slow down, and really like make purchases intentionally? Is there transparency when someone says, I need to step away? So the mat alone, again, isn't the solution. It's intended to be a layer of awareness so that people can ultimately
Cool.
change their behavior. And so we've never claimed a disclaimer solves everything. It's about harm reduction, not harm denial. You can enjoy breaking, you can enjoy collecting, and be honest about the risks. Those two things can coexist. So that's the whole point of Rip Responsibly.
I just had a great idea for a follow-up episode. I am going to get a behavioral psychologist that deals with addiction on this channel. And I think that would be dope because
Yeah.
it may not, you may have no addiction with sports cards whatsoever. And you just collect wax from the 80s, but maybe you're addicted to something else. You know what I mean? And I actually think that's going to be a cool discussion. So thanks to you, that's on
Love
my
it.
checklist for today.
Brilliant idea.
Alex, this has been awesome, man. I appreciate you. Always do. We'll always give you a platform here, to talk to me and stuff like that because I love what you're doing. If you guys want to hit him up, I've got his Instagram under his name there. Feel free to DM him. Check out the website and jump on a meeting if you need it, or at least tell somebody about it. But thanks,
Amazing.
man.
Thanks so much, Nick.
You
Appreciate you,
got
man.
it.